In the city of glass towers and silent cameras, there lived an artist named Adrian Vale. No one knew much about him. He did not go to gallery parties. He did not talk to collectors. He did not post his work online. He lived in a narrow apartment above a closed bookstore on Marrow Street, where the streetlights flickered at night and the delivery trucks growled like tired animals before dawn. Adrian painted every day. He painted lines, not people, not landscapes, not faces. Lines. They crossed each other, they curved, they repeated, they bent at sharp angles. Some were thick, some were thin, some were almost invisible unless you stepped very close. From far away, the paintings looked like chaos, but if you stood still and let your eyes rest, something strange would happen. The lines would begin to feel organized, as if they were trying to say something. Adrian did not think of himself as special. He did not think he had a gift. He only knew that when he looked at the world, it did not look random to him. The cracks in the sidewalk formed grids. The windows in the buildings formed sequences. The traffic lights blinked in rhythms. Even the rain felt like it was tapping in patterns. When he was a child, he once told his teacher that the classroom walls were breathing in numbers. The teacher had smiled politely and called his mother. After that, Adrian learned to keep quiet. The city he lived in was proud of its security. Every street had cameras. Every bank had layered digital protection. Every message sent through the city's networks passed through encryption systems so strong that newspapers said they were unbreakable. People trusted locks. They trusted passwords. They trusted codes. Adrian trusted shapes. Each morning, he would wake before sunrise. He liked the hour when the city was still quiet, when even the security drones seemed to hover more slowly. He would make black coffee and sit by the window with a small sketchbook. He never drew what he saw. He drew what he felt beneath what he saw. If a car alarm rang twice and then paused, he would sketch 2 short strokes and a long empty space. If a neighbor knocked 3 times on a door upstairs, he would add 3 dots. His pages filled with tiny marks that meant nothing to anyone else. To him, they felt calm, ordered, right. One evening, something small happened. Small things often change the world. Adrian had an old laptop. It was not connected to any social media accounts. He used it only to buy art supplies and read about painting techniques. The bookstore downstairs had once offered public Wi-Fi, and even though the shop had closed, the network still flickered on sometimes. That night, Adrian was trying to buy a rare type of pigment from an overseas supplier. The website asked him to create a new password. He stared at the screen. The password rules were long. 12 characters, upper and lower case letters, numbers, symbols. Most people would sigh. Adrian tilted his head. The rules did not look annoying to him. They looked like instructions for a pattern. He typed slowly. Not random letters. Not a word. He typed a sequence of characters that felt balanced. Letters that curved against sharp symbols. Numbers that mirrored each other. He did not think. He arranged. When he pressed enter, the website paused for a moment longer than usual. Then a message appeared. Error. He frowned. He had not made a mistake. The error message vanished. The screen flickered. For a second, instead of the store page, he saw lines of code, long strings of letters and numbers, encrypted text. He leaned closer. The strings did not look meaningless. They looked like his paintings, clusters repeating, spacing, hidden rhythm. His heart beat faster, but not with fear. With recognition. Without knowing why, Adrian whispered, "You're symmetrical." He reached for a pen and copied part of the string into his sketchbook. The website refreshed. Everything returned to normal. He tried again. This time, instead of creating a password, he pasted a small adjusted version of the copied string into the login field. He did not know what he expected. The screen froze. Then it changed. He was not on the art supply page anymore. He was inside the website's admin panel. Order lists, customer data, Financial records. Adrian blinked. He had not typed a hack. He had arranged a shape. He closed the laptop immediately. His hands trembled, not from guilt, but from a strange awareness. He had seen behind something that was not meant to be seen, and it had not felt hard. It had felt obvious. For 2 days, Adrian did not touch the laptop. He painted instead. But the lines on his canvas began to change. They became more structured, more precise, like ladders, like keys. He remembered the encrypted string. It had not been random noise. It had been built from repeating blocks. Blocks that mirrored and shifted, like tiles on a floor. He whispered to himself while painting. "They think it's hidden because it's long," he said. "But long doesn't mean hidden. It just means stretched." He stepped back from the canvas. The painting looked like a storm from far away. Up close, it looked like a map. Across the city, in a building with no windows, a system logged an anomaly. A small overseas art supply store reported an unexplained administrative access. No data had been stolen, no files altered, but the login path did not match any known method of attack. It was flagged and forwarded to a regional cybersecurity office. There, a young analyst named Mira Sen read the report. Mira liked puzzles. That was why she had taken the job. Most of her work involved tracing phishing attempts or blocking automated scripts. Boring but necessary. This case was different. She leaned closer to her screen. The log showed that the access came from a residential IP address in the city, but the entry sequence did not match brute force. It did not match known exploits. It looked almost clean, as if someone had opened a door using the correct key, except the key had never been issued. Mira frowned. "Who are you?" she murmured. She marked the case for deeper analysis. Adrian returned to his laptop on the third night. He told himself he was only curious. Curiosity had always been his quiet companion. He opened a blank document and copied the encrypted string from his sketchbook. He stared at it. To most people, it would look like chaos. To Adrian, it looked like alternating pressure, like dark and light brush strokes. He began to rearrange small sections, not randomly. He adjusted spacing in his mind. He imagined folding the string like paper. Patterns emerged. He tried another small website, a public forum with weak security. He did not want to hurt anyone. He pasted a variation of his rearranged string into a search bar. The page did not crash. It unfolded. Hidden directories appeared. He could see private posts. He pulled his hands away from the keyboard as if it had burned him. This time, he did feel fear. Not because he had done something wrong, but because it had been easy. Too easy. Adrian walked outside to clear his head. The night air was cold. The streetlights hummed. He looked up at the windows in the tall building across the street. Some lights were on, some were off. He counted. 2 on, 1 off, 3 on, 2 off. A sequence. He whispered it under his breath. His mind began to align the pattern of lights with the encrypted string. It matched. Not exactly, but in structure, repetition, variation, mirror. He closed his eyes. What if encryption was just art? What if it was just a painting stretched into numbers? The thought made him shiver. Mira spent the next day tracing the residential IP address. It belonged to an old building on Marrow Street, registered to Adrian Vale. Occupation, artist, no criminal record, no known affiliations. She pulled up images from local art listings. His work was not famous, but a few photos existed. She paused. The paintings were strange. Lines crossing, repeating shapes, dense clusters. They reminded her of something. She opened the encrypted string from the art supply store case and placed it side by side with a photo of one of Adrian's paintings. Her breath slowed. The visual rhythm was similar. Of course, that could mean nothing, but her instincts told her otherwise. Adrian tried one more experiment. He chose a public government information site. Nothing sensitive, just a city archive database. He copied a section of its visible encrypted traffic using a basic network viewer. Again, the strings appeared like woven threads. He did not try to break it directly. Instead, he painted. He stood before a blank canvas and recreated the string as lines and angles. He simplified it. He removed extra strokes. He balanced uneven sides. After hours of work, the painting looked calm. He returned to the laptop. Using the simplified visual structure as a guide, he typed a short sequence. The page hesitated, then opened a restricted section. Adrian stepped back from the desk. His chest felt tight. He had not studied cryptography. He did not know the math behind encryption, but he could see its skeleton, and once you saw a skeleton, you could move the bones. In the windowless building, Mira received another alert. This time, the breach touched a city archive server. Still minor, still no damage, but the signature was identical to the previous anomaly. Clean, elegant, not violent like typical hacks. She whispered, "You're not forcing your way in. You're aligning." She opened a deeper monitoring program and set a silent watch on Adrian's IP address. She did not report him yet. She wanted to understand. Back in his apartment, Adrian stared at his hands. They were covered in faint paint stains. He flexed his fingers. "I'm not a thief," he said softly. He did not want money. He did not want secrets. He only wanted to see if the patterns were truly patterns, if the world's locks were just badly composed paintings. He looked around his apartment. The floorboards had a repeating grain. The radiator pipes bent at consistent angles. Even the cracks in the ceiling formed branching symmetry. Maybe nothing was random. Maybe encryption was only pretending to be. He felt both wonder and dread. If he could open small doors so easily, what about big ones? He closed the laptop again, but this time, he knew something had changed. The world no longer looked locked. It looked transparent, and once you see through glass, it is hard to pretend it is a wall. Outside, the city lights blinked in sequences only he seemed to notice, and somewhere in a quiet office, Mira Sen watched a blinking cursor tied to his address, waiting for it to move again. Neither of them understood yet. This was only the first crack, and cracks, like lines on a canvas, tend to spread. The next morning, Adrian did not paint. He stood in the center of his studio and stared at his canvases. The lines stared back at him. They no longer looked like art alone. They looked like doors. He walked closer to one large canvas he had finished the night before. From far away, it looked like a storm of black strokes. Up close, it was careful, balanced, controlled. He traced one line with his finger, without touching it. "If I shift you," he whispered, "what opens?" The thought made his stomach feel tight. Across the city, inside the windowless security building, Mira Sen had not slept much. She replayed the logs again and again. 2 breaches. No damage. No stolen data. No malware. Just entry. Observation. Exit. That was not normal behavior. Most hackers wanted money, power, or chaos. This one wanted something else. Understanding. Mira leaned back in her chair. On her second monitor was a photograph of Adrian Vale taken from a city ID record. He looked ordinary, thin, quiet, dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead. "Artists don't usually break encryption," her coworker Daniel said from the next desk. Mira did not look away from the screen. "Maybe he doesn't know he's breaking it." Daniel laughed. "That's not how encryption works." Mira did not answer, but she was not thinking about math. She was thinking about pattern. Adrian told himself he would stop. He cleaned his brushes. He organized his paints by shade. He even rearranged his small bookshelf so the spines formed a color gradient. But even in rest, he saw structure. The titles of the books formed an accidental acrostic. The barcodes on the back covers looked like thin forests of lines. He picked one book at random and scanned the barcode with his phone. The numbers appeared. He smiled faintly. Barcodes were simple encryption, simple patterns hiding information in plain sight. What if modern encryption was only a larger barcode? That afternoon, a letter arrived under his door. No return address. He froze. No one wrote to him. He bent down and picked it up slowly. The envelope was plain white. His name was printed neatly. He opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It read, "We noticed your curiosity. Please stop. This is your only warning." No signature, no logo, no explanation. Adrian sat down hard on the floor. His first feeling was not fear. It was confirmation. They had seen, which meant what he had done was real. Mira had not sent the letter. She did not believe in warnings without conversation. But someone above her must have acted. Her supervisor had asked strange questions that morning. Is he escalating? Is there financial motive? Does he have connections? Mira had answered honestly. No. That answer seemed to worry them more. An unknown attacker with no motive was unpredictable. She returned to the logs. Adrian's connection had been quiet for over 24 hours. But silence did not calm her. It felt like a held breath. Adrian placed the letter on his desk and stared at it for a long time. The words were simple, but they were printed in a specific font. Clean, government-like. Even the spacing between the lines was precise. He measured it with his eyes. Equal margins, balanced kerning. It was written by someone who cared about structure. He suddenly wondered, was the letter itself a pattern? He held it up to the light. Nothing hidden. He flipped it over. Blank. Still, something about it bothered him. Not the threat. The symmetry. He placed the letter beside one of his paintings. The alignment of the printed text matched the vertical rhythm of his brushstrokes. He felt a strange connection to whoever had sent it, as if they, too, saw the world in grids. That night, he could not resist. He opened his laptop again. This time, he did not choose a small site. He chose something larger, a financial institution's public login portal. He did not plan to steal. He only wanted to test the shape. The encryption handshake appeared in his network viewer as streams of characters. Dense, layered, complex. But beneath the length, he sensed repetition. He whispered softly, almost kindly, "You're just repeating yourself." He copied segments into his sketchbook. He drew them as blocks. He rotated the blocks in his mind like pieces of glass. Hours passed. Outside, the city grew silent. Finally, he typed a short sequence derived from his visual adjustments. The login page flickered. He held his breath. The screen did not open fully, but it glitched. For half a second, internal system labels appeared. He saw server names, infrastructure paths. Then it snapped back to normal. He leaned back slowly. He had not fully entered, but he had touched the lock, and it had moved. In the security building, alarms did not blare. The bank's system was strong enough to resist full access, but the anomaly was detected. The same signature, clean, non-destructive. Mira's screen lit up. She stared at the data and felt her pulse quicken. "He's testing something," she said quietly. Daniel rolled his chair over. "Testing what?" She zoomed in on the code behavior. "He's not using common exploits. He's predicting structural weaknesses." Daniel frowned. "That's not possible without deep cryptographic knowledge." Mira opened one of Adrian's painting photos again. Maybe he doesn't use math the way we do. The next day, two men in dark coats walked into Marrow Street. They did not look up at the cameras. They did not speak loudly. They stopped in front of the closed bookstore. One of them pressed a small device against the door frame. A soft beep confirmed the building's network lines. "Upstairs," one man said. They climbed the narrow staircase. Adrian was painting when they knocked. 3 knocks, evenly spaced. His heart pounded. He knew that rhythm. He opened the door slowly. "Adrian Vale?" the taller man asked. "Yes. We'd like to speak with you." They did not show badges, but they did not need to. Their posture spoke for them. Adrian stepped aside. They entered and looked around the studio. Their eyes lingered on the canvases. "So you're an artist?" the shorter one said. "Yes." The taller man walked toward a painting filled with tight intersecting lines. "Interesting work." "Thank you." Silence hung in the room. Finally, the taller man spoke again. "You've been accessing systems you shouldn't." Adrian swallowed. "I didn't take anything." "That's not the point." Adrian looked at them honestly. "I only rearranged what was already there." The two men exchanged a glance. "What does that mean?" the shorter one asked. Adrian hesitated. How could he explain? "It's like, your locks are paintings. I just adjusted the composition." The men did not smile. "That's not how encryption works," the taller one said firmly. Adrian almost laughed at the familiar sentence. "It is," he replied softly. "You just don't see it." The room felt smaller. The taller man stepped closer. "You will stop, immediately, or this becomes criminal." Adrian nodded slowly. "I don't want trouble." The men left without another word. From a surveillance van parked down the street, Mira watched the live feed. She had insisted on monitoring the visit. She studied Adrian's face during the conversation. He did not look proud. He did not look angry. He looked confused, almost hurt. When he said, "I just adjusted the composition," Mira felt a chill. Composition. That was an artist's word, but it fit what she was seeing in the logs. He wasn't forcing entry. He was rebalancing the equation. That night, Adrian sat alone in the dark. He did not turn on the lights. The city outside glowed softly. He felt exposed, observed. He knew they were watching now. He could almost sense the digital gaze pressing against his walls. But deeper than fear, another feeling grew. Frustration. Not at being caught, at being misunderstood. Encryption was supposed to be unbreakable, but it wasn't. It was simply patterned, and patterns could be seen. He stood up suddenly and pulled a blank canvas from the stack. "If they won't understand," he whispered, "I'll show them." He began to paint with urgency. This was not chaotic like before. This was structured, layer upon layer of mirrored lines. He embedded sequences from the bank's encryption into the brushstrokes. He simplified them. He removed redundancies. He highlighted symmetry. By dawn, the painting looked like a cathedral made of lines, balanced, open, complete. He stepped back, breathing hard. He felt something click inside him. If encryption was art, then he was simply a better artist. At sunrise in the security building, Mira's monitoring system recorded something new. Adrian's IP address had not connected to any external site, but his local machine activity showed heavy processing. She frowned. "What are you doing now?" she murmured. She could not see inside his apartment, but she felt it. A shift. Adrian took a photograph of the painting. He did not post it publicly. He sent it to one address only. The general cybersecurity tip line listed on the city's website. Subject line, "You can see it too." Mira received it within minutes. She opened the attachment. The image filled her screen. At first glance, it was just lines. But as she stared, something strange happened. Her trained mind began mapping it automatically. Clusters aligned with known encryption block structures. The mirrored strokes resembled key exchange protocols. The spacing matched common cipher padding. Her breath slowed. He wasn't guessing. He was visualizing. Daniel leaned over her shoulder. "It's abstract," he said. "No," Mira whispered. "It's a diagram." As she traced the painting with her eyes, she realized something terrifying. The structure he painted removed unnecessary complexity from a widely used encryption model. If translated back into code, it might reveal weaknesses no one had noticed. She felt both awe and fear. "He sees it differently," she said. Daniel looked uneasy. "Can he scale it?" Mira did not answer, because she didn't know. In his apartment, Adrian waited. He knew they would understand the painting. At least one of them would. He did not want to destroy systems. He wanted someone to admit the truth, that encryption was not magic. It was design, and design could be improved or dismantled. As the morning light touched his studio walls, he felt both powerful and very small. He had opened tiny doors. He had touched larger locks. Now the watchers were watching closely. And somewhere in a quiet office, a woman was staring at his painting, seeing not chaos, but a key. Mira did not print the painting. She did not send it to her supervisor. She kept it on her private screen. For 3 hours, she studied it. The lines were not random. They bent at angles that matched key rotation intervals. Some strokes ended sharply, like terminated loops. Others folded back, like recursive functions. She opened a secure test environment on her computer. Carefully, she translated one small section of the painting into simplified code. Not full encryption, just structure. When she ran a stress test against it, something strange happened. The model revealed a timing weakness. Very small, almost invisible, but real. Her stomach tightened. "He's not breaking encryption," she whispered to herself. "He's simplifying it." And when you simplified something complex, you often exposed its weak bones. Across the city, Adrian stood in front of his newest canvas. He had not slept. His eyes were red, but clear. He felt something inside him opening, the way a window opens when fresh air pushes in. He dipped his brush into blue paint. Color had always been secondary in his work. He mostly used black and white. But now he saw that color mattered. Different encryption systems felt like different temperatures. Some were cold and metallic. Some felt warm but layered. Some were bright but fragile. He painted a deep blue curve across the canvas. "This one breathes slower," he murmured. He did not know the names of encryption standards. He did not know the equations. But when he looked at encrypted traffic on his screen, he felt rhythm. Fast spikes, slow waves, balanced pulses, like music or like heartbeats. That afternoon, his laptop blinked. An email, no official seal, no threatening tone, just a simple message. From Mira Sen. "We need to talk." Adrian stared at the name. He did not recognize it. He opened the email. "You sent us the painting. I understand part of it. You are seeing structural repetition in cipher design. If you continue alone, people will panic. If you speak with me, maybe we can avoid damage. Meet me. Public place. No tricks." Below the message was a time and location. A quiet museum cafe near the river. Adrian read it twice. She understands part of it. That sentence made his heart beat faster. Not fear, relief. The next day, the museum cafe was almost empty. Soft light fell through tall windows. The air smelled like coffee and old paper. Adrian arrived early. He chose a table near the wall. He studied the floor tiles while he waited. Black, white, alternating squares, like binary. When Mira walked in, she recognized him immediately. He looked exactly like the ID photo, but more fragile somehow, as if he lived mostly inside his own head. She approached slowly. "Adrian?" He stood. "Yes." They shook hands. Her grip was firm. His was careful. They sat. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Mira said, "You're not using traditional hacking tools." Adrian shook his head. "I don't know how to." "You're predicting key structure." "I'm adjusting symmetry," he replied. She watched his face closely. "Do you understand what encryption is?" she asked. He hesitated. "It's a painting made of numbers, a pattern that hides another pattern." Mira almost smiled. "That's not wrong," she admitted. "But it's also math. Prime numbers, large keys, random generation." Adrian tilted his head slightly. "Nothing is fully random," he said softly. She paused. "In theory, encryption relies on randomness, on unpredictability, on keys so large that guessing them would take thousands of years. But in practice, systems are built by humans, and humans repeat." Mira leaned forward. "How are you doing it?" Adrian searched for words. "When I see the encrypted strings, I don't read them. I feel their balance. If a section leans too heavily to one side, I know it can be folded differently. When I fold it in my mind, I see where it opens." She blinked. "That sounds like spatial reasoning." "It's just composition," he said. Mira opened her tablet and pulled up his painting. "This section here," she said, pointing to a cluster of mirrored strokes. "It maps to block cipher repetition. You removed redundancy." "Yes? How did you know it was redundant?" He looked confused. "It felt louder than the rest." She leaned back slowly, louder. "In cryptography, repeated blocks can sometimes leak patterns. That is why modern systems use chaining modes to hide repetition. But no system is perfect. You realize," she said carefully, "that if you scale this ability, you could break global systems." Adrian's face went pale. "I don't want to break anything." "But you already have. Small things." He lowered his eyes. "I only wanted to see if the patterns were real." "They are real," Mira said quietly. The words hung between them. Back at the security building, Daniel watched the meeting through remote surveillance. He did not like this. "This is risky," he muttered. His supervisor folded his arms. "If the artist cooperates, we learn from him," the supervisor said. "If not, we contain him." Daniel glanced at the screen. The word contain did not sound gentle. In the cafe, Mira asked, "Have you tried stronger systems?" Adrian hesitated. "Yes." "How strong?" "A bank." Her jaw tightened. "You touched financial infrastructure?" "I didn't enter fully." "That's not the point." Silence fell. Adrian looked out the window at the river. "The water has patterns too," he said quietly, "even when it looks chaotic." Mira followed his gaze. "You think everything can be understood visually?" He nodded. She took a deep breath. "Then let me explain something visually." She pulled up a diagram of a modern encryption protocol. Color-coded blocks, key exchanges, public and private components. "This is like two people painting together," she said. "They share some colors openly, but they each keep one color secret. The final image can't be copied without both secrets." Adrian studied the diagram carefully. "Yes," he said slowly, "but the brush strokes still repeat." Mira felt a chill. "Show me," she said. They moved to a quiet conference room inside the museum, borrowed under official excuse. Mira connected her tablet to a projector. She loaded a sanitized simulation of a strong encryption handshake. The room lights dimmed. Streams of characters flowed across the screen. Adrian stood up slowly and walked closer. He did not touch the screen. He simply watched. Minutes passed. Mira waited. Finally, Adrian spoke. "The first layer is decorative," he said softly. "What?" "It's there to create density, to make the eye tired. That's padding and initialization vectors," she said. He nodded faintly. "But this part here," he pointed to a repeating cluster. "It mirrors every 8 beats." Mira zoomed in. She counted. 8. Repeat. 8. Repeat. Her pulse quickened. "That's block size," she said. "Yes. And here," he pointed again, "the rotation is predictable." "That's based on a known algorithm," she said defensively. "But it's beautiful," he said. She blinked. "Beautiful?" "Yes. It wants to balance itself. You can feel where it will move next." Mira swallowed. "Can you predict the next step?" Adrian closed his eyes. For a long moment he stood still. Then he spoke a short string of characters. Mira typed it into the simulation. The system did not fully unlock, but it hesitated. The processing time spiked abnormally. Daniel, watching remotely, sat upright. "He's destabilizing the timing," he said. Mira stared at the screen. "You're right," she whispered. Adrian opened his eyes. "I didn't break it," he said quickly. "No," she agreed. "You bent it." They turned the lights back on. Mira felt both fear and excitement. "You see structural rhythm faster than our models," she said. Adrian looked tired. "I don't want to be a weapon." "You might not have a choice," she replied honestly. He sat down slowly. "What happens if I stop?" "Others will try to find what you see, less carefully." He thought about that. "What happens if I continue?" She met his eyes. "The world depends on encryption. Banks, hospitals, governments. If people believe it can all be seen through, panic." He whispered, "But it's already fragile." "Yes," she said. "That's why we protect it." That night, Adrian returned home with a new weight on his shoulders. He stood in front of his canvases again. Now they did not look like private explorations. They looked dangerous. He pulled out a fresh canvas. But this time, instead of simplifying patterns, he began adding complexity. Extra strokes, unexpected angles, visual noise. He experimented with hiding symmetry instead of revealing it. If he could see structure, maybe he could design better structure, stronger locks, locks that even he would struggle to unfold. In the security building, Mira wrote a private report. She did not call Adrian a criminal. She described him as a visual structural analyst with extreme pattern sensitivity. Her supervisor read it silently. "Can he be recruited?" he asked. Mira hesitated. "He's not motivated by money or power." "Then what?" "Truth." The supervisor frowned. "Truth doesn't sign contracts." Late into the night, Adrian painted with urgency. He layered colors, blue, red, gold, over black foundations. He intentionally broke symmetry. He forced imbalance. He tried to confuse his own eye. After hours of work, he stepped back. For the first time, he could not immediately see the structure. He felt strangely proud. Maybe this was the answer. Not breaking codes, rebuilding them, reimagining encryption as art designed by someone who understood both beauty and weakness. He smiled faintly, but deep down, he knew something. If he could see through old systems so easily, someone else somewhere might learn to see the way he did, and they might not care about balance, or beauty, or consequences. As he turned off the lights, the city outside continued humming with encrypted messages, billions of invisible patterns flowing through cables and air. Most people slept peacefully, believing in their digital locks. Adrian stood at the window, watching the lights blink in rhythm. For him, the world was no longer silent. It was a canvas covered in hidden lines, And now, he was beginning to understand not only how to open doors, but how to redraw them. The painting would not leave Adrian alone. He had tried to make it stronger, more complex, harder to read. He had layered colors and broken symmetry. He had added false paths and misleading curves, but when he stood in front of it long enough, the structure still revealed itself. Not fully, not easily, but eventually. He sighed. "You can't unsee balance," he whispered. Outside, the city moved like always. Cars stopped at red lights. Phones buzzed with messages. Money moved silently between banks. Hospitals stored records behind invisible walls of encryption. Everything depended on locks no one could see, and Adrian could see them. In the security building, Mira stared at a new report with growing concern. It was not from Adrian. It was from another country. A military archive had experienced a strange glitch in its encrypted communication system. No data stolen, no damage. But internal timing irregularities were detected. The signature was familiar, clean, elegant, like someone had touched the system lightly and then let go. Daniel leaned over her desk. "It's spreading." Mira's heart felt heavy. "It's not him," she said quickly. "How do you know?" "Because he hasn't connected." She had been monitoring his IP activity constantly. He had not attempted any new access. Daniel crossed his arms. "Then someone else is doing the same thing." Mira didn't answer. That possibility frightened her more. Adrian felt the shift before he saw it. He was making tea when his laptop, sitting closed on the desk, lit up with a notification sound. He froze. He had turned off automatic alerts. Slowly he opened it. An email. No name, no subject. Inside, only a short message. "You see it too. We've been waiting." Below the message was a long string of encrypted characters. Adrian's hands trembled. He had never shared his method publicly. Only Mira knew, and he trusted her. So who was this? He stared at the string. It was dense, advanced, stronger than the bank's system he had tested. But even at a glance, he sensed something strange. The structure was familiar, not identical to his painting, but inspired by it. Someone had studied the same weaknesses. He whispered, "You're not the only one." In another part of the world, far from Marrow Street, a small group of unknown figures sat in a dim room lit by computer screens. They did not know Adrian's name. They only knew that recent encryption systems had begun showing instability after a strange painting circulated quietly within certain technical circles. The painting had leaked. Mira had not shared it officially. But digital systems are porous. One junior analyst had taken a screenshot. One file had been copied, and once an image exists digitally, it can travel. Now others were experimenting. Unlike Adrian, they did not care about beauty. They cared about leverage. Mira received confirmation of 3 more anomalies by evening. Different countries, different sectors, same subtle touch. No brute force, no malware, just elegant destabilization. Her supervisor called an emergency meeting. Inside the glass conference room, tension filled the air. "This is coordinated," one official said. "It's conceptual," Mira corrected quietly. All eyes turned to her. She hesitated, then continued. "Someone has identified structural repetition in common encryption models. They're exploiting timing and symmetry weaknesses." "Can they fully break it?" another asked. "Not yet," Mira replied. The word "yet" hung heavy. Her supervisor spoke firmly. "Find the source." Mira swallowed. She already knew where the source began. Adrian did not respond to the anonymous message. He copied the encrypted string into his sketchbook instead. He studied it under soft lamplight. It was aggressive. The pattern did not seek balance. It pushed. It forced. It was designed to crack systems open, not understand them. He felt sick. This was what Mira had warned him about. If others learned to see structure the way he did, they might not use it gently. He walked to the window. The city lights blinked in steady rhythm. He imagined them all going dark at once. ATMs frozen, hospitals locked out of records, air traffic control screens glitching, the world without locks. The thought made his chest tighten. The next morning he called Mira. She answered quickly. "I was about to call you," she said. "You've seen it," he replied. "Yes. It's not me." "I know." Silence. "They're using the idea," he said softly. "Yes. What happens if they push harder?" Mira did not soften her answer. Financial collapse, communication failure, military confusion, panic. He closed his eyes. "I didn't mean for this." "I know. But meaning doesn't stop consequences." Her words were not cruel. They were honest. By afternoon, news outlets began reporting minor global network instability. Officials reassured the public. Temporary glitches. Routine maintenance. Nothing to worry about. But behind closed doors, fear was growing. Several stock exchanges experienced micro delays in encrypted transaction verification. Tiny delays, milliseconds. But in high-frequency trading, milliseconds matter. Hospitals in 2 countries reported brief access issues to patient files. Again, resolved quickly. But enough to cause alarm. Encryption systems were not broken. They were trembling. Adrian sat in his studio, surrounded by paintings that now felt dangerous. He picked up the newest canvas, the one where he had tried to strengthen the structure. He studied it carefully. He realized something. He had been trying to make encryption more complex, but complexity was not the answer. Complexity could still hide repetition. What if the answer was unpredictability beyond symmetry? Something organic. Something asymmetrical in a way even he could not easily unfold. He dipped his brush into green paint, then yellow. He began painting not in straight lines, but in curved, uneven strokes inspired by nature. Tree branches, river bends, cloud edges. Nature had patterns, but they were irregular. Fractal, self-similar, but never identical. He whispered, "What if encryption grew like a tree?" In the security building, Mira stared at a graph showing global encrypted traffic. Spikes appeared and disappeared. Someone was testing, probing, pushing boundaries. Daniel looked pale. "They're getting closer to full key prediction." Mira's stomach dropped. "How?" "They're automating structural analysis." She knew what that meant. Someone had turned Adrian's insight into a tool, a weapon. Her phone buzzed. "Adrian," she answered. "I have an idea," he said without greeting. "I'm listening." "Encryption shouldn't look like architecture." "What should it look like?" "A forest." She blinked. "Explain." "Buildings repeat. Forests don't. Trees follow rules, but no 2 branches are the same. If keys grew like branches, organic, unpredictable, layered, it would be harder to fold." Mira leaned back slowly. "You're talking about dynamic fractal key generation." "I don't know the words," he admitted. "But yes." She felt a spark of hope. "Can you design it visually?" "I think so." "Then we need it now." That night, Adrian worked harder than he ever had. He filled canvas after canvas with branching structures. Each branch split unpredictably. Each split followed a natural curve, not a mirrored angle. He layered color gradients to represent evolving key states. He imagined encryption not as a fixed lock, but as a growing organism, always changing, never symmetrical long enough to predict. He felt exhausted, but for the first time since the warnings began, he felt purposeful. Meanwhile, the unknown group pushing global systems grew bolder. They attempted a coordinated destabilization of a major international banking protocol. Not theft. Demonstration. Encrypted transactions began failing in batches. Screens froze. Error messages multiplied. Markets dipped sharply. Governments panicked. In the security building, alarms finally blared. This was no longer subtle. This was visible. Mira stood at the center of chaos. "Is it fully breached?" her supervisor demanded. "No," she replied, "but they're exploiting timing to create collapse." "Can we patch?" "Temporarily." "But," she looked at him steadily, "they understand the structure." Adrian felt the shift like a pressure change in the air. His internet slowed suddenly. News alerts popped up. Global financial systems experiencing disruptions. He closed his eyes. It had begun. The world without locks was no longer a theory. It was forming. He grabbed the largest canvas he had. He painted with desperate focus. Branches splitting into smaller branches, each split triggered by a different color input. He imagined keys regenerating with every transaction. Never static. Never balanced long enough to map. He whispered over and over, "Grow, grow, grow." Mira's phone rang. "Adrian, is it ready?" she asked urgently. "Almost. We don't have much time." "I know." He paused. "Mira?" "Yes?" "I'm sorry." She took a deep breath. "Then help fix it." By midnight, global systems hovered at the edge. Still functional, but fragile. Adrian sent high-resolution images of his fractal encryption concept to Mira through a secure offline transfer. She stared at the designs. They were beautiful, complex but not symmetrical, chaotic but guided. She handed them to her cryptography team. "Translate this into code," she said. They hesitated. "This is art," one engineer protested. "It's architecture," she replied firmly. "Just different architecture." Adrian stood alone in his studio as sirens echoed faintly in the distance. He did not know if his idea would work. He only knew that the world could not go back to believing locks were permanent walls. They were living systems. And living systems had to evolve. He looked around at his paintings. Some revealed weaknesses. Some strengthened them. He realized something important. He had not broken the world. He had shown it that its walls were thin. And now, it had to choose. Collapse in fear, or rebuild with deeper understanding. Outside, the city lights flickered briefly, then steadied. The world was not without locks yet, but everyone now knew. Locks could crack, and patterns could spread. The world did not collapse, but it came very close. For 3 days, global systems shook like glass in a storm. Banks slowed. Military networks switched to emergency modes. Hospitals prepared paper backups. Governments spoke calmly on television, but behind the scenes, panic moved fast. The attacks were no longer quiet experiments. They were tests of power. Someone had taken the idea of structural weakness and turned it into strategy. They were not stealing money. They were proving a point. No lock is perfect. In the security building, Mira barely slept. Teams worked around the clock translating Adrian's fractal designs into real encryption models. Lines of code replaced brushstrokes. Color transitions became shifting key variables. Branching shapes became recursive functions. "It's unstable," one engineer said. "It's new," Mira replied. "Keep going." On a large screen, the global instability map blinked red in several regions. The unknown group was escalating. They launched a coordinated disruption against an international satellite communication channel. For 12 minutes, encrypted signals desynchronized. Flights were rerouted. Military systems paused. It was not full control, but it was close enough to scare everyone. Adrian watched the news from his studio floor. He felt responsible, even though he had never spoken to the attackers. They had seen what he saw, but they enjoyed the breaking. He did not. His phone rang. "Mira, they're targeting power grid authentication next," she said quickly. Adrian's heart pounded. If they destabilize that, cities go dark, she finished. He stood up and looked at his largest fractal painting. It's not ready, he said. It has to be. In another hidden room somewhere far away, the unknown group prepared their biggest demonstration yet. They had built software that scanned encryption traffic visually, almost like Adrian did in his mind. Their system detected symmetry and repetition patterns automatically. When it found a weakness, it pushed timing attacks at scale. They did not know Adrian's name. They only knew that the world's locks were made by humans, and humans repeat themselves. Launch Phase 3, a voice said. Streams of encrypted grid authentication data began to pulse across their screens. Back in the security building, alarms flared. They're inside the outer layer, Daniel shouted. Mira felt cold. How long? Minutes. She grabbed her tablet and called Adrian on secure line. It's happening now. I'm sending the final draft, he said. He had stayed awake for 30 hours, refining the fractal structure. Each transaction would create a new, unpredictable branch. Every authentication request would grow its own pattern. No fixed symmetry, no steady rhythm. Upload it to the test grid first, he said. We don't have time, she replied. He closed his eyes. Then grow it live. The room went silent as Mira gave the order. Implement the fractal protocol. Engineers hesitated only a second before executing. Code flooded into the grid authentication servers. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the monitoring screens changed. Instead of clean, repeating waves of encrypted traffic, the data streams began to twist. They split unpredictably. They rejoined at uneven angles. They changed timing mid-cycle. Daniel stared at the screen. It looks chaotic. Mira shook her head. It's alive. In the attacker's hidden room, confusion spread. Our symmetry detection is failing, one operator said. Adjust filters. We can't lock on to repetition. It keeps shifting. Their automated tools searched for mirrored blocks. There were none. They looked for stable timing windows. They dissolved. The encryption was no longer a building with repeating floors. It was a forest in motion. Push harder, the leader ordered. They increased attack intensity, but the more they pushed, the more the system branched. Each pressure point created new, unpredictable growth. Timing attacks collapsed under shifting keys. After 10 long minutes, their screens filled with error feedback. We're losing structure, someone said. The leader stared silently. For the first time, they were not reading the system. They were lost inside it. Abort Phase 3, he said coldly. The attack streams went dark. In the security building, tension broke slowly. The red zones on the global map faded back to yellow, then green. Engineers leaned back in disbelief. It's stabilizing, Daniel said. Mira exhaled for what felt like the first time all day. She picked up the phone. It's holding, she told Adrian. He sat down heavily on his studio floor. Good. You did it. No, he said softly. We did. The news that night reported that attempted global cyber disruptions were successfully contained. Officials praised advanced cybersecurity defenses. No one mentioned the artist on Marrow Street. No one mentioned fractal paintings. But inside secure networks across the world, a quiet change began. Encryption systems started evolving. Static symmetry was replaced with organic unpredictability. Locks were no longer walls. They were growing systems. Mira visited Adrian the next evening. No dark coats this time. No threats. She walked into his studio and looked at the massive fractal canvas. It saved millions of systems, she said. He shook his head. It will only work for a while. She frowned. What do you mean? Someone else will learn to see forests too. She knew he was right. Encryption had changed forever. Not because it failed, but because it had been understood. She looked at him carefully. You could work with us? He gave a small smile. I already am. She glanced around at the paintings, lines, branches, balance and imbalance. You're not afraid anymore? She asked. He thought for a moment. I'm afraid of silence, he said. Not of patterns. Outside, the city lights blinked in steady rhythm. For now, the world still had locks, but it also had someone who could see through them and help them grow stronger. The cipher war was not over. It had only changed shape, and somewhere in the dark, others were already watching the forest, waiting to learn its rhythm. The world became quieter after the attack failed. Not peaceful, just careful. Governments did not celebrate loudly. Banks did not explain what had almost happened. News reports slowly moved on to other stories. But inside secure buildings across the world, encryption was changing. Old systems built like towers were being replaced with living designs. Systems that shifted, branched, and grew. Adrian's forest had spread. Adrian stood by his window one evening, watching the lights of the city. They blinked in patterns only he still noticed. But something felt different now. Before, he had looked at the world and seen locks that could be opened. Now he saw something else. He saw fear. Fear hidden behind stronger walls. Fear of the next person who might see like he did. His phone buzzed. A message from Mira. We found them. He stared at the words. The group? He typed back. Yes. Several arrests. Not all. But enough to stop them for now. He felt relief, but only a little. There will always be others, he whispered. Mira called him. They were using a visual scanning system, she said. Primitive compared to you, but effective. I'm not special, Adrian replied softly. You are, she said. You just don't see it. He did not answer, because he was beginning to understand something uncomfortable. If encryption could be redesigned, it could also be redesigned again and again. The war would never truly end. It would only evolve. Days passed. Adrian painted less. He spent more time thinking, not about systems, not about banks, but about people. He sat in a small park one afternoon, sketchbook on his knees. Children ran across the grass in unpredictable paths. Birds flew in curved lines against the sky. Wind moved leaves without symmetry. Nature was complex, but not secretive. It did not hide behind locks. It simply existed. He began to wonder, why did humans need too many secrets? Passwords for phones, codes for doors, encryption for every message. What were they protecting? Information or themselves? That night, Adrian opened his laptop again, but not to study encrypted traffic. He opened a blank document. He typed one sentence. The strongest encryption is trust. He stared at it for a long time. Digital locks could grow like forests. They could become unpredictable. But as long as humans feared each other, they would build higher walls, and someone would always try to see over them. He thought about Mira. She had trusted him when others wanted to contain him. That trust had saved systems, not just math. Trust. A week later, Mira visited him again. This time, she did not talk about threats. She walked slowly through his studio. You stopped painting lines, she said. He nodded. On the walls now were softer images, not strict fractals, not dense structures, open spaces, light moving through branches, water reflecting sky. I'm tired of breaking and fixing locks, he said. She studied one canvas carefully. It looked almost simple, but when she focused, she saw depth beneath the calm surface. What are you working on now? She asked. He smiled faintly. The final encryption. She raised an eyebrow. That sounds dangerous. It's not code, he said. It's understanding. She waited. When people feel safe, he continued, they don't need so many secrets. When systems are honest, they They don't need to hide behind false complexity. Mira crossed her arms gently. You can't redesign human nature. No, he agreed. But maybe we can redesign how we relate. She looked at him carefully. You're talking about transparency. Yes, not full exposure, just balance. He walked to the window. The problem wasn't that encryption was weak. It was that it pretended to be perfect. She thought about that. Systems had promised unbreakable security. That promise had been a lie. Everything made by humans can be understood by humans. Eventually. Later that night, Adrian uploaded one final image to a public art forum. Not to a government channel, not to a secure server, just to the open internet. The painting was simple. A forest at dawn, light moving through branches. No hidden diagrams, no mapped cipher structures, just growth. Below it he wrote, "Nothing built by humans is unbreakable, but anything can grow stronger when we admit its weakness." The image spread slowly. Most people saw only art. A few engineers looked closer and recognized the philosophy behind it. Encryption began shifting again, not just technically, but culturally. Designers stopped calling systems perfect. They began calling them evolving. Months passed. Global networks stabilized under the new fractal protocols. Attacks still happened. They always would. But now systems adapted faster. They did not rely on fixed symmetry. They learned. Just like forests recover after fire. Mira continued her work. Sometimes she called Adrian for advice. Sometimes they met for coffee and talked about nothing related to security. He painted, not to expose locks, not to challenge systems, but to explore balance. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Mira asked him a final question. "If you wanted to," she said, "could you still break them?" He looked at the skyline, lights blinking in gentle rhythm. "I could try," he admitted. She waited. "But I don't want to." "Why?" He smiled softly. "Because the real code isn't in the machines." She tilted her head. "It's in us," he said. "Fear, power, control. If we keep solving only the machine side, we miss the deeper pattern." She nodded slowly. He turned back toward his studio. The canvases glowed in warm light. Lines still existed in his art. Patterns still formed. He would always see structure in the world. That would never change. But he no longer wanted to tear structures apart. He wanted to help them grow wisely. The first encryption he broke was digital. The last encryption he understood was human. And that one could not be solved with symmetry, timing, or code. Only with trust. Outside, the city lights blinked steadily. The world still had locks, but it also had forests now. And somewhere in a quiet studio on Marrow Street, an artist finally painted without trying to open anything at all.